I can't even remember what your question was, but everything all of it to say, like, from the beginning, it was just like, this is so weird and crazy and fun and not afraid of anything. And what an amazing gift as an artist to be invited into something that isn't leading with like fear or leading to like copy or emulate, something else, but to say, we're making something entirely new. And we might all fail. Like, there were moments where you're like, we're out on a limb right now with this one, and it could not work, but it did work. And I think the lesson is like, you're not always gonna come out the other side with Barbie, but if you don't go out on that limb and try to make something that feels and looks like nothing else, you're sure as hell not gonna get to Barbie.
Great answer. Don't know the question. So, Billie and Phineas, I'm so excited I get to meet you because I've never gotten to meet you yet, and I've been a huge admirer of your work since the handful of years that you guys kind of burst onto the scene with such a big impact. I think there's an interesting backstory to what your family connection might be to Barbie and Mattel. I wondered if you might start by sharing that.
Yeah. Hi guys. Well, our father, who's like sitting right there, raise your hand.
Oh wow! Dad, stand up. Say hi, everybody. And mom too. Hold on.
And my mom sitting there too. Our dad was a carpenter at Mattel when we were kids, and we never saw him, like literally ever. But he worked like.
So Barbie's made out of wood. What am I not getting here?
He was a carpenter. He built sets.
Sets. Yeah.
At Mattel, and he would leave at like 4 a.m. and come home late at night, and sometimes he would I thought it was really cool that he worked there because he sometimes he would come home with scraps from Barbie sets that he would find in the garbage. And so like in dumpsters, sometimes he would like pull out like Barbies that had been thrown away or like pieces from sets. There was this one thing that he gave to me. Maybe he shouldn't have been taking stuff, but he was. There was one thing.
It's okay now.
It was like an apple, like a little plastic apple that was like pink, this like bright pink apple, and I just thought it was really cool, and I have it still somewhere in my house. But
Like a tiny Barbie size?
no, like an apple-sized.
Oh, apple-sized.
Like a fake plastic one that was like part of some set. Yeah. For years, that was it, and he, one time found an unopened Barbie, like holiday Barbie or something, in like the garbage or something. I got that for Christmas. It was awesome. Yeah.
So Barbie like had a certain mystique to you, even if like Barbie's more like my era or maybe even older when it was like super cool, because there were other things that came in and kind of replaced it.
Nothing, honest to God, nothing has replaced Barbie. Like,
For you.
I really don't think it's ever been replaced. I think there's been new things. I think like, I loved like Monster High dolls. That was my shit. But like, Barbie was always Barbie. It was never like, oh, who cares? It was so. I think that's that. It's kind of rare for things to be so adored and beloved and remain that way for generations and generations and generations, because I didn't know. I had no idea Barbie was like an old thing. I was like, oh my God, this is my favorite thing in the world, and I loved all my Barbies, and I treated them like gold. I loved Barbies so much. And then my mom would talk about Barbies and her Barbies when she was a kid, and I was like, wow, like this is a lifelong, I don't even know. It's really amazing the way that it has affected us all, I think.
So it came about that Greta reached out to you, or you heard about the project and said we'd be interested.
Yeah, they wrapped principal photography, and I, like everybody else, had kind of seen like TMZ photos of Margot and Ryan on rollerblades on the beach, and I'd been like, damn, okay. We're huge fans of Greta and Noah, and yeah, one of our team members, Paul, was having a meeting totally separate from us with Inan at Mattel, And Enon at this point was like, oh, Mark.
Enon Kreitz, who's the
Yes,
CEO of
correct.
Mattel, right? Yeah.
And Enon was exclaiming about how excited he was about Barbie, and he told our team member Paul about like, Mark is doing this soundtrack, and it's gonna be amazing, and you know, the people that work with us champion us and are great. And he was like, well, you don't have a Billie song. And he was like, can we get a Billie song? And he was like, I'll call him. So we got this call out of the blue of like, do you want to maybe talk to Mark about doing something for the Barbie movie? And I was like, yes, of course.
That's kind of crazy that
It's
it would
crazy.
come through the CEO of Mattel. It's not usually part of the
No, not usually.
team. I mean,
No, for sure. So
Yeah.
we got really lucky. And then we were put in touch with Mark, and then Mark put us in touch with Greta pretty quickly. And she was very adamant that we see the movie if we were going to write anything. Which again, like all of this, like I talk about this a lot, but we feel like fans who snuck into the back of like the party. And so the idea that we were going to get to see some rough cut of the movie 6 months before we would otherwise get to see it was enough to us that we were like, that's sick. Even if they don't want us to make a song, that's awesome. So we got to go see, it was the first 40 minutes assembled, and then several scenes, America's amazing monologue, the Now Feel scene with Ruth, I'm Just Ken. We got to see some really pivotal moments in the film.
so you mean the dance scene?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we got to see these things to kind of take home with us and be inspired by, and we just loved it. We just loved the film. We were super moved by it, and we wrote the song the next day. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys write together? Does one of you write the words? One of you write
It
the
is
music?
really, at this point, you know, we've been working together since I was 13 and Phineas was 17. And those were our ages when we made a song called Ocean Eyes and put that out. And
Amazing.
it's
13.
Really, 13 and 17 is ridiculous. But it's changed a lot over the years, but I think at this point it's very 50-50. We are so you know, when we talk about a song we've written, it's like hard to remember who wrote what because it's very equally we're equally contributing, I think, at this point, which is really, really fun. It's really amazing. I feel like I mean, you know, I write on my own too, and Phineas writes on his own, but when we write together, it's really honestly like nothing else, and I can't really recreate it. It's special, and I think that when we're inspired, like when we were, you know, the day after we saw Barbie, we were just like filled with, you know, I've said this a gazillion times, but like we hadn't been creative at all, and we were not coming up with anything, and we just were completely like stumped. We just had nothing, not about Barbie, like in general. We were trying to make this album, and we were like, we have no ideas, we're not good anymore, this and that, and you know, saw Barbie, and 24 hours later, we had been working that day and not coming up with anything and not being creative, and I was like, dude, I'm going home. We should stop. And then just Phineas was like, well, let's just take a crack at this Barbie thing. And I remember being like, bro, what? You think after this whole months of not creating anything and this whole day of sitting here for 6 hours and coming up with absolute garbage, we're gonna come up with an incredible Barbie song that's gonna be like good enough for this movie? Like, absolutely not. And we wrote it in like under 2 hours. Yeah, kind of amazing too.
So you saw the footage, and you just went back to work like your normal work. You had a session and were working on an album.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, you're like, well, let's try this.
Mhm.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greta had said this thing when we were first speaking to her. She said, you know, what are you working on right now? We said, we're supposed to be working on Billie's next album. And she said, oh, great, well, then this can be the way that you procrastinate.
That was awesome.
I think we felt so daunted by how little progress we felt we were making on the album at the time that I was like, oh my God, like we don't need to procrastinate, we can't even get the album going. But she was completely right. Like it was such a she said, she was like, that's what I love when she was like, when I'm working on a big project, I love a little distraction to work on. It was really smart.
It's really true, but because that's what's going to be one of my questions going to ask you guys is that why you do movie scores, because of course you wrote the song for James Bond, Time to Die as well. Like, what is appealing to you about that, given that you have your own very strong creative voice that you put out there that is an expression of, you know, the inner you and just what you guys do together, which is so special.
Yeah.
Then if you collaborate on something like a film, like you've got all this other inputs and, you know, so you're kind of answering the question that I was going to ask later, but it's additive to the creative process for you to work on something that really kind of belongs to somebody else, because it's Greta and Noah's vision in a way, right?
Well, you know, I'm glad you asked because you know, writing for something, especially film, TV, whatever it is, but having a prompt, having some sort of guideline, something to write about is my favorite game. Truly my favorite game. Like, it's like, I don't know, there's something about it. I think having like I really like having an assignment. I really like having like a challenge and you know, I like having parameters, rules kind of. And honestly, it's hard for me to be vulnerable sometimes in a lot of ways, but in writing music. I've said this before, but like I don't find it easy and or fun to write about my own feelings most of the time.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes some people, when they write songs, really like writing about how they specifically feel in their experience. And I have found that really difficult and challenging, and it's really hard for me, because I guess it's hard for me to understand how I'm feeling until later. And so, you know, something that Phineas and I have done for our entire lives of writing music is given ourselves something to write about, like a fake story. Like here, what if we wrote a song from the perspective of somebody who's like a rock climber and they like need to whatever it is. Like, you can just come up with anything and then, you know, write about it. And there's something about writing for somebody else that I love so much, and I love putting myself in other people's shoes. And
well, it might be easier in a way. It's like a little less scary.
Well, it's not
maybe.
vulnerable. It's not very
Not as
vulnerable.
Well, it's so interesting because you've also talked so much about how personal the song is.
Well, that's the thing, is that when we were making this song, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about Barbie, and I was thinking about the movie, and I was thinking about, you know, like, there's footage of us writing the song. And
Me, you were thinking about me.
I was thinking about you. I mean, literally, I was thinking about your monologue, and that was replaying over and over in my head, and I was not thinking about myself at all. And there's footage of us writing that song, and the whole time we were like, well, you know, when like America says this, and then like Margot's doing this, and okay, so like if she, not about myself, not about me, not about my life. It's like Barbie, Ken, this, that. And then, you know, a couple days later, I'm listening to it, I'm playing it for a friend, and I'm like, who wrote this shit about my life? Because it wasn't me, but then it was. So yeah, really weird, because sometimes that happens, your subconscious is there, you know, and anyway, blah, blah.
Well, I think that's it. Like, if it's good, it's honest. And if it's honest, then it's got to relate to something real.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I love also about it, especially in contrast to the other song, is that it's literally the yin yang of the movie, right? Like, one is this like fun, you know, funny, you know, energetic thing, and then your song is so delicate and straight to the heart, it feels like. Yeah. So, did you do, like, what were you thinking about, I guess? You're thinking about when you wrote it, what were you thinking? Or are you aware of what you're thinking about? Because I know that it feels like it brings the heart of the movie out, the song itself.
Well, you know, when we saw Greta and we saw what she showed us of the movie, she kind of, you know, she was like, you can make anything, it doesn't matter, you can do anything you want to make.
It's such a good impersonation. Greta, is that you?
But like, she wouldn't give us an answer, right? She was so, you know,
She was being so
humble.
generous, yeah.
She's, you know, and she's like, you don't have to make, if you don't even want to make anything, you don't even have to, it's like, just don't even worry. Like,
It really does sound like that.
make something, like, and we were like, girl, shut the fuck up and tell us what you want us to make. Tell us what you want us to make, because we will make exactly what you want. Like, I wanted her to be happy, and that's all I wanted. I was like, girl, like, we're here for you. Don't be all, you guys can do whatever you want. Like, okay, sure, but like, tell us what you want, because we want to make what you want. And, you know, we eventually got her to be like, okay. If I could have anything, in an ideal world, if I could have anything specific, and you could do anything you want, but if I could have one thing, it would be Barbie's heart song. And I want her heart. Oh, it makes me like choked up almost, because it's like I just think about how I felt when I was watching that movie for the first time, and feeling her, you know, and you feel her heart, you know her heart when you watch it. And you know, we had replaying in our heads that scene where they're in the like white abyss, and it's her and Ruth, and she's crying, and she takes her hands and she just says feel. And originally when we saw it, it was only the shot of Margot crying. There was no montage and there was no song. And we knew we wanted to make something for that scene. And there was no world that it was going to be upbeat and happy. There was just not in the world that was going to happen. That didn't need, they had that. That was already there. That's also not what I do, y'all. That's not what I do. So, yeah, it was obvious what we were going to make, I think, immediately. Yeah.
Pretty great.
But you say that she wanted the heart song, and I heard Mark Ronson say this on another panel, which was that when they heard this song, they basically, if you go back and watch the movie and pay attention, they string What Was I Made For, the melody of it, throughout, and you'll see it starts popping up when Barbie starts having complicated feelings, and it's sort of like, it is her heart song sort of pulling her towards where she's going, and they weaved their song back into the whole movie.
So cool.
I'm now Mark Ronson, you're welcome.
You're not doing well, okay. Let's talk, America, about the speech that you give that is the heart of the movie, and that is now going to basically make you the symbol of feminism for the next 40 years. So hope you're comfortable with that. So let's just back it up a little bit. What did you think when you read it, and how did you prepare to completely naturally, as if off the top of your head, kind of come out with this, I'll call it a cri de coeur, like a cry of the heart of like what it's like to be a woman today, that's connected with everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. I love hearing musicians talk about their process, because it just feels like such an alien thing. But hearing you talk about it, it is so much a similar thing of, you get a story and a character that you get to step into, and you get to see it through their very specifically written journey. But really, you know, what it is, it's like different portals into like your own journey, your own feelings, your own, you know, my version of that. Like, I never played with Barbies growing up, ever. We couldn't afford them. I didn't really feel like there was nothing accessible to me about the Barbie world and Barbie land. And so it just like was never really that part of my life. But for me, what Barbie in this movie stands for, and this is what I think the true genius of Greta and Noah writing the script, is that they didn't just make something up and make you care about it. They took something that everybody already has a feeling about, whether you love it or hate it or have written it off or you think it has nothing to do with you. They pulled off this magician's trick of taking something that you think you knew how you felt about, and then taking you on a journey where it's like, it's not even about Barbie, this is about us, right? And so not having feelings about Barbie, my feeling of what was representative of Barbie is, what is that thing as a child that made you feel like anything was possible? That's what Barbie is to Gloria. Gloria's very specific experience with Barbie is, when I played with Barbies, everything and anything was possible. And now I'm a grown adult woman in the world, and she lied to me, because everything is not possible, and I'm frustrated, and I'm hitting dead ends, and my daughter, who I poured everything into me, is pulling away, and my husband is my husband, and and so for her it was, how do I get back to the feeling of anything is possible, which is also at the core of your song, right? It's how do we get back to that thing of like, oh yeah, life, and it's good, and it's fun, and it's passionate, and maybe everything's not possible, but we can try, you know? And for me as a child, that was that was performance. Like, that's where I was allowed to be everything. You know, my feelings weren't too big for anyone. I could be all the things. And so I did think that for me, it was trying to reconcile, like, who is this woman who is both very real and flawed and frustrated and stuck in her life, but somehow has held on to, has maintained the childlike wonder of, I can summon Barbie into the real world with my imagination, you know, and that was such a joy. And I think it says something that it felt weird to me to begin with, because I think in real life, I am that woman. I'm silly and fun and have an imagination and full of wonder. And I'm a serious businesswoman who a lot of people are afraid of. And we can be all of those things, but kind of the way we're used to seeing ourselves projected back to ourselves is not someone who gets to be all those things. You're in that box, or you're in this box, or you're the dorky best friend, or you're the girl next door, or you're the hot chick, or you're the one the guy wants or the one the guy doesn't want, right? Like, we're used to just seeing ourselves in boxes and not as the whole human beings that we are. And so for me, I get Gloria and Greta's names mixed up all the time.
That's interesting.
Yeah, Gloria's journey in this is like finding her way back for herself and for all of Barbie Land, finding her way back to a place where she gets to be all the things she is. And not surprisingly, like, I feel like that's been my personal journey too. And the journey of making the Barbie movie in a deeply personal way has been a journey of getting to that place for myself too. And where it's like, oh, I'm telling Gloria's story, but then somehow you're like, oh, it wasn't just Gloria's story, it was my story too. So yeah, I don't remember your question, but that's my answer. I'm talking
Sorry. What I was asking let's see, I still want to know what it felt like to deliver the speech. And of course, it's clear when you read this, I'm sure when you read the script, when you see the movie, that is what the movie is there for, is to get to that moment and express that point of view. Was it, did you have to do a lot of takes? Did you have to say it in front of the mirror a bunch? Like, how did you prepare? Because it has to come off feeling like right straight from your heart, like from your gut, actually.
Yeah, we shot that scene for 2 days. So I probably ended up saying that monologue top to bottom, like, I want to say around 50 times. Oh, wow. Like, Ariana, who plays Sasha, my daughter, she had memorized it at the end, and she like said it back to me. And I sobbed. She was really great in it. And we shot it for 2 days, but Greta and I had talked about it for months. Like, we talked about every time there was something in the culture, like this article or that story or this episode of TV or this op-ed, everything that had to do with the monologue, we would just share and relate to what's happening in the culture, but also to what we've experienced as individual women. And also, you know, I had 40 years experience of being a woman, so that helped. And then, you know, I think by the time we got to doing it, I had all these months to deeply weave each of those lines so personally with my own experiences and you know, which helps because then you don't have to act or overact. You get to just say the words and let the words kind of pull whatever thread it pulls. And because we did it for so long, that it was such a gift to have time with the words and to have time with letting each take me wherever it was going to. There were takes that ended in hysterical laughter, takes that ended in rage. I think there was literally a take where I turned into a dragon and I just screamed. And I'm glad I've never had to watch that take. And, you know, it was just doing it and letting, and it was different and unique from every other day on set where Greta was very specific with what she wanted. She had a very, like she's a dancer and I think she's musical by nature, and like the way she heard the dialogue was so specific in her head, in a lot of ways very musical, and Ryan always says that she was like always tuning us, and that's right. She would close her eyes and have us run the lines, and then she'd tune us. She'd make us go faster or slower or slow it down or so it was always very specific.